After these 2 weeks, you're now familiar with the concept of facade technologies and facade typologies. I would like now to bring you back to Rotterdam to do a recap of the key differences between typologies and technologies. Come with me. So, facade typologies are the main families and categories of facades that exist in the real world. You will look then with Ulrich into the details of which facade typology. Mainly, facade typologies are defined in 2 main categories: facades that are load-bearing and facades that are not load-bearing, or in other words, that are hung or carried by another structure. I'll give you an example. Typical masonry facade, where the facade is load-bearing and is carrying the slabs. This is a typical load-bearing facade, so the typology is load-bearing wall system. Another example of a non-load-bearing facade, the curtain wall of the Rotterdam. This is a completely different typology because it's a facade that is hung on a building and is carried by a frame, which is the primary structure. Now, things can be a bit confusing sometimes because what we define as technology is something more focused and detailed. So it's the specific technology and therefore group of building components and connections and materials that we are putting together to define a specific detail and facade construction. So within the same facade typology, we have different technologies that we can apply to realize the same typology. I'll give you an example. We mentioned before load-bearing measuring walls as a main typology. There are multiple ways we can build and design a load-bearing measuring wall. This, for instance, is one typology and one specific technology, one specific type of brick, one specific type of layer within the bricks, and also one specific type of wall window systems within the wall. If we look at the building in the front of it, it's also a load-bearing measuring facade, so the same typology, but with slightly different technologies, different type of bricks, different type of connections, and also window systems. So you can already identify within the same typology different technologies. Now, here the difference was very subtle, but if we looked at modern curtain walls, the difference between technology and typology is even clearer. Let's have a look, for instance, at the Rotterdam, where the main facades at the top floors are all curtain walls. Specifically, so the typology is a curtain wall, a facade that is not load-bearing and is hung on the primary structure, but with a specific technology. Now, if we looked at other high-rises in all our buildings, you will notice that there are many different technologies that can be used to realize still a unitized curtain wall. I'll give you an example. Single skin or double skin facade, they can be both same typology, curtain wall, unitized systems, but have slightly different technologies. For instance, depending on the layer and the build-up of the glazing and the number of cavities that the facade has. Now, different technologies will also have different performances. That's how you, as a facade design engineer, will have a major role in identifying the best technology and typology depending on the functionality and the characteristic of the building. The reality is that real buildings are never one typology or one technology. Look at here. All these high-rise are actually a combination of different typologies and technologies. So in reality, buildings are highly complex systems, and we use a combination of typologies and technologies. But now you have all the basic grammar and vocabulary to identify in each building which typology and technology is used. And now it's time to go back to the office and start the next module, which is facade materials. Let's go!